I know, says I gotta go, tired of going solo, but I'm never gonna go there again. This is what it is, this is who I am, this is where I finally take my stand. I didn't want to fall, but I don't have to grow. I'm not the one with two star hands, giving him the best of everything that's left of. The live inside this man, I've been born again.
Oh, yes. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Eddie Huff with my sidekick, or my kick in the side, Dave van Risingham, or David Van, as he likes to be called.
You try to Germanize it.
I know. And you know, it has more flair. It sounds like you're a celebrity. David Van. You know, it sounds so much better than Van Risingham. Yeah. And, oh, by the way, we want to welcome a special guest today, Julian Delia. Julian, our sound guy, he has been missing in action for a while. And then, of course, last week I was gone. I went to the OU Texas Tech game.
Somebody's got to root for Tech.
Yeah. Hey. Guns up, everybody. Guns up. Hey, I do want to say this real quickly before we introduce our real special guest, and I do believe he's special. But I went to the game, and this week the polls came out, the first BCS poll, and they ranked OU at number 8.
God.
Number 8. Now, here's the problem. You got OSU fans probably, and Texas fans, and all these other Big 12 people that think, they need to. Well, you don't understand. It's really not a slam on OU. It's a slam on the conference.
Yeah.
So if you take joy in them knocking down OU, you take joy in knocking yourself down. I mean, it's stupid, really.
Right.
And I here's the real funny one, okay? They've got Oregon up in like number 5 with OU at 8. Now, they're talking about strength of schedule. Oregon lost to Stanford.
Yeah.
Stanford's record is 3-5.
Yeah.
OU beats Texas Tech convincingly. Beat us convincingly.
Yes.
Right? And Tech has a 5-3 record.
Yep.
The opposite of Stanford.
Sure.
OU is undefeated. Yeah. They've beaten Texas. They've beat West Virginia. They've beaten Kansas State. You know, they're undefeated, basically. And our records, the records of the team OU has beaten is better than those of the other. Yet, for some reason, the Big 12 is not supposed to be any good.
It's systemic bias.
It is.
It's the whole conference.
Yeah. So anyway, I was pretty exercised about it and upset about it, and I guess I still am. So apparently. But anyway, that's another thing. And I do want to mention our special guest, Mr. John Cox.
Yes.
Welcome, John.
Thank you.
And we're going to get to Mr. Cox here in just a few minutes because I think I'm just going to, right now, before I even get started, I'm going to nail him with questions. It's grill time. But I will say, this is the guy I want to support, okay? I'm just going to get it out there. I'll be honest. I'm not going to be like these people that try to pretend I'm neutral. You know, it's like these pundits these broadcasters, Herb Street, sits there with an Ohio State game. He was a quarterback for Ohio State, and he wants to pretend that he's for OU or something. Yeah. So, no, I'm coming up front, but I want John to know, hopefully, these are the questions that people want to know about. Yeah. But before we do all that, we've got to do our Babylon Bee.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've got a few nice ones here this week. Okay. The first
one. Something?
No.
I want to apologize. Last week, I was sick and the dog couldn't talk. You were busy helping your alma mater,
trying to push them across that goal line.
So we missed last week. You guys didn't, miss the podcast. Podcast missed you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Dave, actually, he's just recovering from COVID-29. Yeah. And so, but he's all clear, I think. Yep. We'll find out.
Tested.
Yeah.
Double tested.
John, we better be tested.
We'll find out in 3 days.
Yeah, we'll find exactly what. In 3 days. Yeah, man. This is going to be fun. Okay, so, Babylon Bee. Donald Trump proposes harnessing liberal tears to provide clean energy. After what is being called a productive first year in office, President Donald Trump is proposing a plan to provide the nation with clean energy throughout all 50 states. The plan reportedly includes, as a key component, the harnessing of the nation's abundant supply of liberal tears, the flow of which would be utilized to power massive hydroelectric generators installed throughout the nation. Trump and his advisors reportedly got the idea while watching the nation's widespread protest against his presidency and noticed an abundant flow of salty tears, the energy-giving potential of which was being completely squandered as the teardrops ran off into gutters and evaporated into thin air. People say, I'm no good on energy. Wrong. I'm great on energy. The best, Trump said. No one has ever been as good on energy as me, he said in a press conference to announce his new energy plan. Let's put these tears to work and let's make America's energy great again. By the way, if you notice, this is an old one, but I felt it was very, very apropos for today. But here's a more current one that you might appreciate. Colin Kaepernick is sad that no slave owner will enslave him no matter how many times he tries out to be a slave. Did that go over your head? Let me read that again.
Yes, I'm his laugh track. I'm supposed to.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just unusual when you. I thought this one was actually really good. It's not just funny, but it's actually true if you think about it. Colin Kaepernick is sad that no slave owner will enslave him, no matter how many times he tries out to be a slave.
I'm awake.
There we go. In his new 6-episode limited series on Netflix, Colin Kaepernick proudly proclaimed that no NFL slave owner will ever enslave him, no matter how many times he tries out to be a slave. After being emancipated from his former owner, the San Francisco 49ers, in 2016, Kaepernick has worked tirelessly to become a slave again. I try out for every NFL slave operation every year, and they keep rejecting me. The NFL is oppressive, and it's also oppressive that they refuse to oppress me. Anyway, I'm not going to go on, but it's just so nonsensical that Colin Kaepernick, who thinks the NFL and America basically are so oppressive and still tied into slavery,
Sure.
But yet he keeps trying to go back to work for that same plantation.
Hey, let me throw a contrast in there. J.C. Watts, he didn't like the deal he got, when he was drafted initially, so he went and played the Canadian Football League, became a hero, superstar there. So there still is free enterprise on the global stage. Yeah, we do have a problem with the monopoly and the antitrust we're giving them. I'll agree on that.
But see, the problem is the Canadian Free League does not pay as well as those slave owners in America.
Well, that's life,
Yeah. So apparently Colin has an issue there. Hey, John, listen, thank you so much for hanging in there with us. He's trying not to laugh too hard, I'm sure, because I'm sure as a politician, he's thinking, okay, what do I do?
Well, yeah.
Who's going to see this? Who's going to hear this?
When you haven't had a chance to focus group which jokes you're supposed to laugh and which you're supposed to be offended at,
Yeah, I don't know if Jeanette warned you that there's no filter on this thing. Okay,
that's okay.
Okay,
that's
good. Right. No, seriously, welcome very much. I have to say before I begin the questioning or our questions, again, I'll go back. I remember when you originally ran for superintendent several years ago against Joy Hoffmeister. Who has now decided she's a Democrat. You were a Democrat. You are now the Republican.
Yes.
But I knew she was fake all along. I knew she was a fake Republican. Now, I learned to respect Oklahoma Democrats. And this is the truth. Not all, but I have learned to not just automatically assume that a Democrat is the modern day Democrat in Oklahoma. And I learned that through Dan Boren.
Yeah.
I opposed him. And after he won, when I was just ripping him to shreds on the radio as much as I could, he actually came on right after that. And I remember asking him, I said, I have to apologize to you because I was really hard on you. He said, yeah, I heard. And yet he still came on the show.
Yeah, he did.
And he proved that he truly was an Oklahoma values candidate. He had, even though he was a Democrat, and he's in the 2nd district. It's different down there. Little Dixie is in the 2nd district. You've got that whole eastern part of Oklahoma that runs all the way down to Texas there. And they're a conservative bunch of people. So they're different. They're old school Democrats, right?
They are.
They would be, I guess, what are they, the blue dog Democrats who have the conservative, the yellow dogs are the ones that I don't care what you do, or which I'm never voting for a Republican, right?
Some of Cole County is still that way. You know?
So that's, but anyway, so I've learned, and so when John was running against his Democratic competition, and then of course Joy Hoffmeister, I knew at that time, and it wasn't so much. I heard your platform and the things you wanted to do, and just something spoke to me that this is the guy. He's a superintendent in a district here in Oklahoma. The things he was saying were right, and Joy Hoffmeister I knew was a sham all along, and yet people didn't want to listen. Which it's okay. I mean, it's a free country, and I think we've seen now. But now Joy Hoffmeister decides she's going to be a Democrat and run against the Republican governor. So that's kind of interesting. But anyway, John, welcome so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. It was a really pleasure. When I heard, I said, really? He wants to come on here? But okay. Thank you again. Hey, so first, I think I'm going to give you the opportunity here to tell us a bit about yourself. You're a native Oklahoman.
Yes.
You're born in, and so where in Oklahoma? Just tell us about yourself.
Okay. Well, first, I'd like to say, because I think the memorial for Pat Campbell's today, and he actually brought me onto his radio station before the last election, and I think that's what really gained me Republican support, because they could see that I'm conservative, and like you said, I'm superintendent. I've been in the trenches, and so I thought that was really important, and that was sad. To see that. So
the memorial is today, by the way, after this.
I just want to mention that because he was really great to me. So I appreciate that.
But, we lost a good one. It's funny, we lost 2 this year, didn't we? Between Rush and then locally Pat. So,
but I grew up in Stillwell and went to grade school there, and then moved to Jay. My parents were retiring, but they didn't really retire. But so we moved there. I graduated there as valedictorian of Jay High School and country school.
Really? Valedictorian? Wow.
Yeah, just a neat place to grow up. And so public school's been all of my life. I started teaching in Wyandotte, and then back to Jay, and then Locust Grove. Jumped into the superintendency as a superintendent principal 28 years ago at PEGS, and I've been part of that community. It's home.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so valuable here with this run and with the past runs, is that I work in it every day, so I see the effects of policies and things that are really getting in the way of teachers doing their job, and just keeping us from doing what we're supposed to do, and that's help kids have the opportunity to do anything they want to in their life. So
that's good.
It's
that's
valuable.
Good. Yeah. I mean, it is, and I think people in Oklahoma they're confused. I would say people are somewhat confused, particularly parents.
Yeah.
And so it's one of these deals. So, like, what do you believe you bring to the table that your competition does not?
Well, I know my experience is the greatest thing, because one of them has 5 years as a superintendent, and I have 28. And then my advanced degrees that actually study to be an administrator. I think that's extremely important. My licensure, I have 12 different areas on my license to be able to teach in mathematics, counseling, administration, psychology.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, just a lot of different areas. And so the value I bring is that I've been there. I've already learned that. I've been tempered by fire, I think someone said, in the last 8 years. So I know the issues out there and what we need to do. And so right now my life is set. I retired 2 years ago, but I've been working in retirement for the school to help them out and trying to pay back for what they've done for me all these years. And so, I think it's important to be able to give yourself. I can't sit at home and just put my feet up and say everything's okay for public ed, because it's not. And it's not, to me, it's not about winning the state superintendent. It's about getting the message out there. And I think what's valuable that last 8 years is I would talk, and then my opponent would say the exact same things the next time because she just didn't really know. And so she was learning from me and transitioning. So I think we got our voice out there. And then I've been blessed. God's blessed me to stay where I am because second place sometimes isn't a bad place to be.
Yeah.
So I've been blessed by where I'm at and taken care of. So
now you say she was mimicking.
Absolutely.
It's one thing to say those things.
Yeah.
Do you think she actually followed through on any things that you?
I just kind of, to me, I just smile when I hear about the 8-year plan because I wanted to see that book because I knew it was blank. I mean, that the whole time it was, we got to have an 8-year plan, and yes, you have to think ahead and try to see 15 years from now what we want for this next generation to have. But it's hard to have a plan when you've never been in it. Mm. And I think that's value that I bring to the table. And I think common sense, I've just been hearing from a lot of people, we just need to get back to the basics, get these social issues out of the way, let parents take care of that, and just go back and teach math and reading and then build a foundation for our kids to be anything they want to be.
Yeah. No, I think that's it right there. In fact, I was going to ask you, what do you feel the biggest challenge to education in the state of Oklahoma is over the next, say, 10 years?
It's really bad because I don't know if people have been watching about the teacher shortage, and I think 3,500 emergency certified, and bless those people who have come back to us to help us, because if we didn't fill that void, I don't know what we would do. But it's hard to entice young people to come into a profession where everybody's saying it's a bad deal. And so we have to have somebody promoting our teachers and really enticing young people to come. It's a new generation.
Do you think the barrier to hiring those new teachers, the next generation, is income, or is it the work conditions?
Most of the teachers I talk to say it is working conditions. My teachers at my school say it's not about the money. They were excited and happy about getting the raise, but that wasn't what they were looking at. They were looking at policies that keep them from being able to teach in the class and all the extra paperwork that comes along with it. The TLE system that is really database driven for the State Department to look at our teachers. There's just a lot of different pressures that are put on them. And so I don't think it's money driven, but then again, for young people coming out, they're looking, should I go to McDonald's and work and make $30,000 and not have any of the stress, or go be a teacher for $40,000 and have that on my shoulders all the time and having to be the answer to everybody.
Right. How did J schools, Pegs.
Uh-huh.
How did Pegs schools rank academically in the state? Would you say?
So we're typically, in the past, we've always been an A or B school. And then they reset it about 3 years ago. And we study really hard for that test. And that's one issue we'll talk about in a minute. But when the first year on the reset, we did really well. So there wasn't much room for improvement the second year. And so the way the A through F system works is that if you have a lot of improvement, you're going to score a better grade. So we went from an A to a D because when they reset it, we already improved quite a bit. So we outscored schools that made Bs, but I had a D.
Right, which always seemed like a weird way to grade, that you're being graded on your improvement, and therefore if you can't improve, then you can't.
And I understand them putting that in there. That shows that your school's getting better, but there still should be, if you're at a level, you should be able to stay at that level. But parents don't understand it because they think if you're a C school, what does that mean?
Right.
And I want to bring another way to a kind of a dashboard where parents can look at it and go, well, my fourth grade daughter is in this fourth grade math class, and this is how they compare to the students in there, and why are all the students scoring bad on the test, or why are they all scoring good, and be able to look at it. But right now they don't. You don't see that.
I have to say, that's a joke. Which college would rate their enrollment admissions based on how much better you did on this SAT versus the last SAT?
Yeah.
No, they want a real number. Where are you at academically? And so
And it's two separate groups.
Yeah,
from year to year, you're measuring two different groups against each other.
It's an absolute joke.
Yeah. But I want to actually use what we're already doing through the year, formative assessments, and watch growth on that, because it's not important for the state to see it. It's important for the community and parents to be able to look and see how their school's doing.
Exactly.
And you see that growth throughout the year. And if you're not having growth, there's a problem there.
When you mean say growth, how do you define
growth? Is where and really it depends on intellectual abilities and your IQ and the ability to learn. So some students grow at a smaller rate.
Okay, development.
And you have to look at the individual child to see if you have made an impact on their learning. Yeah. Because you can't just compare two kids to each other, because one might have an IQ of 130 and one might have an average IQ of 100.
Right.
And they're going to grow at extremely different rates. Yeah. And so that's why this whole system thing, it's a lot of money that's being spent on something that's not valuable. And then we get test results 3 months later. Yeah. And then there's no use to even look at them.
And it's a red herring. It's a distraction.
It is. Yeah. And so, and the other part of that is at my school, we test prep really hard so that we don't look bad by taking the test. If you don't play the game, you're going to look bad, and they're going to say you're a bad school.
Yeah. Wow.
I want to get those 2 months back for instruction, so we teach up to the end of the school year.
Yeah.
And then that gives us 2 months. And if you start taking 2 months per year for the 12 years, 13 years you're in there, that's a lot of instruction time that we can gain back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking, forget how well you did on their state test, and look at what is OSU, OU, TU, whatever, SAT, ACTs. I mean, you already have a standard.
You do.
And you just basically you need to know how to do math, how to do English, and how to write and compose and math. And those three, it's back to the 3 R's. Bottom line, right?
And it's so important because eventually 75% of our kids will not go to college or finish. And they need to have that foundation where they can go into the trades industries and give them a certificate before they graduate. That way, as they walk across the stage, they know what they're going to do. But most seniors, they go across and go, well, what's for me now? Well, I'll just go to college for a while.
So you're actually for reintroducing vocational training alongside the academic.
Yeah, more emphasizing than anything, emphasizing it more and making it more value and making those students feel really good about doing it, because there's a stigma attached to going to tech.
Yeah.
And there should not be.
No. That's interesting, because I'm totally for that. My kids went to school overseas in Holland and Germany, and they do have the 3 tracks. I don't like the way they separate the kids. They separate them very early, and they base a lot of where you get placed on your parents' level.
Yeah.
So if you had some Eastern Oklahoma farmer versus some city kids whose parents may be doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, or whatever, they're going to purposely make sure those kids do better, because they figure, well, you're a farmer's kid. You're supposed to be a farmer. Your dad's a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker. Yeah. That's what you're going to be. You're stuck in that class. But at the same time, they do have that heavy vocation, and they do have a way out of it. You can still go back to university at a later time.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that you don't look at the vocations of the parents, that you look at what interest that child has. Yeah. And in junior high, promote that more to see if that's what they want. And by the time they get to high school, they can decide by themselves if they want to go into a technical area.
Well, yeah. And honestly, a lot of the technical training today requires as much academic ability as it does to sit in a...
It's applied. Right. The math is applied to what they're doing.
Exactly. Rather than kids that can't wait to get out to that party or whatever they're going to do.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm speaking as one who partied his way through 4 years of college.
He was a jock.
Yeah, and I didn't realize until I was done, in fact, I had to get on-the-job training, and I thought, man, if only I'd learned this the first time, this would be a lot easier. Yeah. Now I'm spending all of my time. I'm working during the day. I'm still studying at night to try to catch up on stuff that I should have learned for 4 years earlier.
Can you imagine the economical boost, though, of a an 18-year-old graduating high school with a plumber's certificate, and they're going to go out and make $35,000-$40,000 right there at 18, and the money that puts back into the state, and just, it helps everything.
It does. It does. Yeah. Hey, we're going to go ahead and take our first break here, everybody. We'll be back after these messages. This is Eddie Huff and Fresh Black Coffee.
Join us as we celebrate the life and legacy of Tulsa's favorite conservative talk show host Pat Campbell. A public memorial service for Pat Campbell will be held Saturday, November 13th, 3 p.m. at Embassy Church, 7100 East 31st Street in Tulsa. Tulsa's conservative talk radio host Patrick J. Campbell went to be with his Lord and Savior on the morning of October 20th, 2021 after a years-long struggle with brain cancer. A man who fought for life to the end, Pat outlived his doctor's expectations by almost a year. Come celebrate our friend Pat. A small reception will be held following the celebration of life at the same location.
All right, we're back. Hey, that was, it's so amazing that it's not hard. We had a guest a few weeks ago that was really high on just basic, the 3 R's, right, and how the New England primer was so instrumental in educating the early generations of the founding of this country. Yeah. And I took a 20th century world history class, and at TCC, by the way, and it was just for fun. I like history, and so I just started taking Western Civ classes and stuff because I'm bored, I guess. But anyway, and in this, when I was studying this stuff, I actually believe that the generation between 1865 and 1965 is probably the greatest innovative period in the whole history of the world. I mean, I don't know when fire and the wheel were invented, but I know nuclear energy, electricity, light, sound, telephone, telegraph, all the, rocket, you name it, it was all in that period of time. And these are people, a lot of them didn't even finish school, which is pretty amazing stuff. So it's very important that we do get our kids back to that. And listen, I'm not opposed. I think higher education is very important. Absolutely. And we lead the world in university level, but it's everything down. We're like, number 28 or something like that when it goes grade in secondary school, that the world, it leads us in it. So there's something in everything you're saying that we have got to do. And I'm glad to see that you've got the focus in the right area. What do you see it right now as the biggest problem? I mean, I know we've talked about some of the things, but the biggest roadblock to, actually, I'm going to take it another step. Okay. Minority communities. Okay. You've got North Tulsa. Yes. Probably North OKC. You've got these. Okay. You're coming from a rural district. Yes. You're going to now be in charge of these metropolitan areas. How do you help them?
I think, first of all, you have to surround yourself with great people. I mean, because there's no way that I can know everything and know how to do things. And over the last 8 years, I've been able to learn more about those pockets of area of different races. And even in our area, we're right around 80% Native American. So, and growing up, I really never noticed, because we all grew up in poverty together, so we didn't really notice those things. So, yes. But I think empowering people to be able to have a voice is extremely important, and that sounds so simple. But I know here in Tulsa, I think the parents are really getting out there and talking more and trying to take control of their child's education. That's the way it should be everywhere. And because, the message I give to my staff is that if we don't have parents, we don't have a job, because there are no kids. And so we work for those parents. So no matter if I'm getting chewed out by a parent or not, I have to sit there and realize, hey, I'm working for them, so I need to try to figure out what they're doing. And that took a few years of learning how to step back and listen to people. And so I think that's something I'm really good at, is at least hearing what they have to say. And people just want to be heard. I mean, they really do, but they want some action along with it. So, and you talked about North Tulsa. They need to have a voice, and that's one reason why they stepped out there and tried to get the charter school taken care of for their kids, and because they wanted out of Tulsa Public, but they wanted a voice in their child's education.
So you're not one of those people that's opposed to charter schools?
No, because in rural areas like in PEGS, there's not a reason to have a charter school, because we have an open door, and we try to do the best for a child. But there's still options out there. I have parents that homeschool. There's a monastery that's out in the woods back behind us, and those sets of parents, they did an awesome job homeschooling their kids, and we try to give any resources we can in that way if they need things. So we just try to work with families. But I am not opposed to charter schools, because I understand their need for them and the need for a parent to say, I've had enough, and we've got to figure out something for our child. And a lot of it's out of frustration.
Let me ask you this, the OEA.
Yes.
As a Democrat, you would generally have their support, unless there's somebody more liberal than you. Yep. What is your relationship with the OEA still? Okay,
so I believe in teachers, and even if the teachers belong to an organization such as OEA, those are the ones that I have to support and work for, because as state superintendent, those are the people that are right firsthand with the children. So you have to work with the individuals of the groups. The last two times OEA did not support me, but they did not support my opponent either. And I think that was out of respect for me, but also, not just making sure that they weren't sure who was going to win. They really didn't. And so, I think it's important to have groups, but I don't think that group should have total influence on the state superintendent. I think state superintendent should be someone who isn't, and not bought is the wrong word, but someone who isn't
beholden to.
Beholden to. I think it needs to be somebody in there that knows what needs to be done, but will listen to different groups,
right,
and not adhere to exactly what they have to say. I know they had picked one of my opponents behind the scenes to kind of help push throughout. That's what rumor has. So, but I'm not even concerned about her race, and I think this is going to come down to myself and the Secretary of Education,
right,
between us. So,
well, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right in that, and that's the thing. What sets you apart, do you think, from that Secretary of Education?
I think he's a really nice young man, got a great family. I think his intentions are really good. I think what separates me is my experience. I taught 8 years and then 28 years with being a superintendent. He's taught 7 or 8 years history in school and then propelled into the Secretary of Education. So I look for a great future for him someday, but I think my experience and just being able, you have to be able to answer education questions, because this isn't a head or a post. This is someone who has to know the intricate parts of running a state department and what goes on in public schools. And frankly, 7 or 8 years in as a teacher, you just can't know what goes on in the office.
Yeah, that's true. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right, let's go back to 2018.
Sure.
Teacher walkouts, wildcat strikes, in my opinion. Hoffmeister was mostly AWOL.
Yeah.
How would you have handled it different had you been in Hoffmeister's position?
Well, it wouldn't have happened.
Tell me.
Because I think teachers were extremely frustrated because they did not have a voice.
Okay.
It's the same thing now as parents are not having a voice, and that's what I've been telling people. I supported the teachers whether they stayed home or they were there, because I could see what the things that they were going through back at home. But there was no reason for them to have to stop school. They should have had support.
Did PEGS stop classes?
No, we didn't. Yeah. And I got a lot of backlash on that. Now, I think we took one day off because my teachers wanted to go up there and be a part of that and show support for teachers. But we knew we had business back at home.
Only a third of the school district shut down.
Yeah. I just think it's important for people to have their voice, but I think you also have to know that, and like I said a while ago, I work for parents.
Okay.
My teachers work for parents. So that's who we're beholding to.
Okay. But had you been faced with that, despite all your best efforts to avoid it, what would you have done? What would you have said to those school districts about what was basically a wildcat strike?
I think it was going to happen regardless because of OEA bringing them in. But I think I would have tried to step out there strong and bold and push them back into the classroom and let them know that I'm going to be the one walking around that Capitol and pushing for them, because most teachers, they wanted to be back with their kids.
Okay, one last question on that.
Yes.
Why do you think Hoffmeister was so silent?
Because she couldn't figure out which way to go. She absolutely couldn't figure out how to maneuver the political part of that.
You don't think
walkout.
she was owned by the OEA?
I think they had a great relationship with each other, but I don't think she could figure out how to maneuver it.
Okay.
And it's all about having a voice, and I'm proud of the legislature for coming across and giving that raise to the teachers. I think that's extremely important. Our teachers, in my mind, don't make enough anyways. Now, like I said earlier, my own teachers, they don't look at the pay. They look at the reward of helping a child. Job satisfaction.
That's a good teacher.
It is a good teacher, and that makes me want to reward them even more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so really to get more young people in, you have to look at least making $50,000 a year coming out of your first year, because then you're looking at making 60 when you retire 30 years later. So,
and if you want to compete in the marketplace for your best employees, let's not call teachers it's almost like you've got engineers, you've got business people, you come out of this and it pays levels here, and here. Yeah. And we need to start looking at education in the same way. And here's what really ticks me off. University professors who teach a lot less and put up with a whole lot less than high school and primary school teachers, and yet they're getting buku money while the teachers are on here. So I'm not opposed to teachers either making what they're worth, but that's the key, what they're worth. It shouldn't be just a general principle. You're a teacher and this is what you should be making. I would like to see a reward system that really rewards the better teachers. And I'm gonna pose this to you.
Okay. That's going to be a tough question. So.
I don't know. But my thinking has been to take, let's say, those at-risk areas, because we have schools in Tulsa, right? You got Jenks Union and certain ones that Booker T, let's say. Those teachers are always seen as the better teachers because whether they are or not. I'm just saying because they're in good districts. But here's the deal: what if we take and add an automatic 15% bonus to teachers that are willing to go to those failing school districts. And then on top of that, tie in, if you bring up the level of the graduation level, your testing level, you bring up all of these, then we're going to give you an extra 5%. So now we're paying those teachers more because they're dealing with more. I mean, obviously, it's like hazardous duty pay in some case in the military, but I don't know if that's legal, if you can do that or anything like that. But that's my view, and I'm not going to ask you to respond to that.
I'll respond.
Oh, please.
Well, because that is a local decision. You can do those things locally.
Oh, you can.
And
thank you.
And and actually, like with our teachers, some of them do extra duties, different duties where we can help reward them as far as on the contract. And so, we're able to take care of our teachers in that direction. So you can do that right now. See, and what I'm looking at is just a base minimum, to entice young people to say, hey,
to enter the field.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you have a standard with it? In other words, are you also going to increase the level of proficiency? In other words, not just you get somebody, I've got a cushy, I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to sit there. Here, kids, here, you open your books and read these pages, and I'm going to sit here on my computer and Google and surf.
It's a lot like the coaching profession. I've seen coaches might have and basketball have a 5-20 season, but they may have done the best job coaching for that 5-20, but you don't see it. There's no reward, but they did an outstanding job. They may have done a better job than someone that went 25-0. You know, so you really have to look at the individual.
Right. And is there a metric available that to judge a teacher's?
I think it's highly subjective.
Yeah.
And that's where the human element comes into play.
Right. Is there a way, do you think, that you could introduce a more objective, to where we start basically testing teachers, or not testing, and not a test, but have some criteria that lets us know whether this teacher is doing the job or not doing the job?
I think that's where national board certification came into play, is to give teachers a chance to accelerate their pay, the extra $5,000. It's kind of been prorated some of the years, but that's allowed them to actually show that they're excelling. So
let me throw a conjecture at you. Get
Sure.
your reaction to it.
All right.
I've often said that teachers in our public schools will never be paid what they're really worth, and I'll tell you why. Because the administrators need them to stay hungry enough to go march at the Capitol. Because the legislature and the voters of Oklahoma really don't care if administrators showed up. But if Susie's fourth grade teacher does, now they care.
I think there's a lot of truth in what you said, because legislators look for what parents have to say and what their constituents. So it's administrators, I think they value our opinion, and I know I've been at the Capitol a lot, and I have great relationships with our legislature.
Yeah.
So they understand what I say, but it's more important when it comes from teachers and from the people.
But, now, you just retired a couple years ago.
Yes.
And you know a lot of teachers that not only recently retired, some of them were offered incentives to do early retirement.
Yeah.
And my conjecture is that's largely because the administrators don't want to pay an experienced teacher what the scale offers them. They'd rather have the unexperienced and lower cost teachers.
I think that becomes an economic survival issue, because it is true, if a veteran 30-year teacher retires, there's about a $15,000 difference to hire a fresh teacher coming out of college. And so,
but what about Susie's education?
Absolutely.
What is she best served by?
She's best served by that 30-year person coming in and then helping train.
How do we fix that? Is that a parent's issue? Beat the door down at the next school board meeting? I mean, really, that is a local issue, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. It's a local issue. And so I try to entice. I mean, we have a lot of 20-year teachers at my place and that have been there with me that long. Mm-hmm. And so I try to entice them, and I try to make their workplace a great place for them. Because one of the other messages I give them is that I don't want it to be a place that they think is work, but a place that they come to just work with kids.
Yeah.
And so that's the environment that we've created. But it is a problem. And, you know, teachers, they're really, really exhausted. Mm-hmm. And because I'm all over the place, so I know what they're going through, but teachers and administrators. Yeah. But a lot of what you're talking about is finances. Yeah. And so if a 30-year career teacher goes, and then we can hire 2 teachers and pay just a little bit more to get 2 teachers, then if we've been efficient with what we've been able to do, but they're not going to be at the level. It's kind of what I was talking about, my comparison with my opponent. There's no way that he can know what I know now. I mean, he can be the greatest person in the world and have great intentions, but you just don't know until you do it. Yeah. My conjecture, though, is a good teacher who has control and command of the classroom, has the attention and the inspiration of the kids, is going to be able to handle classes like I grew up in, 30 kids to a class. Yeah. But we had not only the support structure behind the teachers, the parents who the kids actually feared, the punishment when they got home more than the punishment from the schools. Yes. Yeah, it's reversed. Yeah.
Of course, that's bygone. I mean, you know,
I know it is,
especially particularly in those at-risk areas, what we call at-risk areas. But you don't have that parental support.
I think what you're talking about, though, and that's the value of me being at PEGS for 28 years, because now the grandparents are the ones that were the parents before, so I've grown up with them. Mm-hmm. So there's a certain expectations out there, but if I'm gone and they have to replace me with somebody new, then you're going to lose all of that historical,
Yeah.
and that's what you lose in the classroom.
Yeah.
That
What-
experience.
I'll tell you what parents are mad as hell about is the lack of order in the classroom instruction.
But see, that's nothing he can do anything about.
I-
That's another issue. No, well,
there's a bully pulpit there.
well,
There is a bully pulpit, and that is something that you have to put out there. But that is something where the parents need to be directly involved with
yeah,
their
that's
child.
totally a local issue, and not just a teacher issue. To me, that's a community issue.
It is,
and that's
absolutely.
something that should be somehow. I mean, you can talk to the teachers and you can push that,
Yeah.
but. And the PTAs, and it gets to another whole thing
Yeah.
where one of my peeves, my problem with Christian schools, and yes, I said Christian schools, I have a problem with it, is the fact that you're pulling the best parents very often out of that system that could be having influence on your PTAs, on your school boards, and all of these things, and well, school's going to hell. Well, yeah, you sent them there because you pulled your kids and yourselves out. You're not having any influence. I mean, and the whole time your kids were there, all you did is gripe instead of going to the PTAs, going to the running for school board and pushing for better people.
Eddie,
and so forth.
I want to say this, and John, I don't mean to cut you off here,
Yeah.
but this is the discussion that needs to happen, is too many things are thrown at the legislature as being the failure.
Mm-hmm.
And the dialogue needs to be clear to enunciate. Look, folks, look, parents, these are issues that the school board locally can't throw the blame on the legislature for. You can't throw more money at some of these problems and fix them. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, John. What is your relationship with a lot of the superintendents throughout the state? Are you well known? Are you pretty much, you stay in contact with a lot of these people?
I'm pretty well known. I'm a past president of COSA OASA. 2 years ago, I was president. So as a school, a small rural school that had over 700 of our superintendents involved. So I do that, and then I'm president of our K-8 school districts across the state. So there's 95 of us.
Wow.
So we do that, and we do statewide activities for our kids, and it's all volunteer, but we do it like the high schools do and have state championships and all the different areas. And so I helped start that 20 years ago. And so that's all about giving junior high student, in most cases, giving them a chance to go on to high school and say, hey, I can do this. And so that's probably what I'm most proud of, is being a part of those kids' lives and promoting them to do better things. So I'm the head of that. NSU Alumni Association. I'm the chairman of that board right now. And so I promote everybody who are NSU out there that they need to become a member of our Alumni Association. So that's my pitch there. But I'm proud of who's taking care of me and being a part of that. And I appreciate you asking that.
Yeah, sure. Because that's very important.
Yeah.
Because you got somebody that's constantly at odds. Janet Barisi say, who I thought Janet had the right idea. She had a great heart. She was, I supported most of the things.
Delivery.
Exactly.
Is everything.
And I think that had a lot to do too, though, with the governor, her relationship with the governor. And she didn't want to, she fell on her sword for the governor. But that's definitely milk spilled and water under a big bridge. But I want to get to the really important question of the day. Okay, this is the one.
Okay.
What's your opinion on vaccinating children?
I think that's a parent's choice. And that's, even masks, vaccine masks, that should be a parental choice. And that's kind of how we've handled it at our place, is that, if they opt out, it's because they just don't come with a mask. But we're still diligent about cleaning, and like we do in the flu season, we're sanitizing. And so, I don't want to say this out loud because I'd have knock on wood, but we haven't had any cases, but we've seen a lot of other things, viruses and things, but I just think it's so important that our parents are able to have control of that. And again, that's who I work for, so.
Yeah. Very good. That's about as hard as it gets, because in today's world, that's a very important situation. And in the end, it is all about freedom and people's choice, with the caveat of safety, that you do still want to be sure you're not being stupid in there.
Absolutely.
On the other side of the break, I want to talk about John Cox, the Republican.
Okay, we will do that. Awesome. So we will be back again. This is our final break. You're listening to Fresh Black Coffee.
I'm Jeff Davis with Just a Thought. From the world hindquarters of dubious information, it's Fake News Friday. Odunayo, Baba, Olawad, and others are locked up for fakiness, selling COVID-19 vaccines on a fake website. Their possible 20 years in jail would not be fake. Spinning the facts, lying. President Biden has said the $3.5 trillion bill would cost zero. Now that they've cut it to $1.75 trillion, do we get a refund since, that would be like less than zero, right? A picture of Alec Baldwin wearing a black t-shirt with the words, "Guns don't kill people, Alec Baldwin kills people," was photoshopped. Fact checkers said people did not save their bacon grease and wash aluminum foil. The fact checkers claim it's a fake fact checker who said that. Fact checkers foiled again. A retired general did not say we can teleport people. What he said was we could get them anywhere on Earth within an hour, or your pizza is free. On further review, maybe he didn't say that last part. Just a thought. I'm Jeff Davis.
All right. We're back with the final segment here at Fresh Black Coffee on this week of November 6th. I guess we are in today. John, I'm going to let Dave handle this next question. I mean, not that it's any different or anything, but it is a very good thread.
Welcome to the Republican Party, John Cox.
Thank you.
Tell me, did you leave the Democrat Party or did they leave you?
Democrat Party left me.
Tell me.
And so it's been 3 years, so I didn't change to run, because the first two times I ran, it was just because I saw that there was a need, that somebody had to do something. And so I just wanted to be that voice for people. And so I didn't know I was going to run this time. And so the Monday after the election, I had enough. I had enough of the craziness that was going on. And
in what ways do you still identify with the Democrat Party historically?
Well, when I was 18 years old, my parents, mom and dad, they were Republicans in a really non-Republican county, and so working people 12 hours a day, that's what they were, business people. And so I registered as a Republican, and at that time I just thought it was cool. I thought the word Republican was
You're rebels, what you were.
I guess I was.
It's funny that back then Republicans were cool.
It wasn't, because there was no one else, in Delaware County, Meigs County, Cherokee County, and so and so, but I'd go to vote, and there wasn't anybody to vote for, and so to be active, you actually had to be in that party to active. I didn't know platform, and maybe that's a bad thing, being naive about the platforms. But running for 8 years, I learned platform. Yeah. And so I'm true to myself, being a Republican and what I believe in, my conservative values. I just think that's so important, and that's why I changed. They did leave me, and I was on pretty much that second run on my own, on just trying to get the voice out there. So
I say this, John, really cutting to the chase.
Yes.
To the Republican voters, we've seen a lot of people move over as politicians. Yeah. Because it just made more sense if they want to get elected. They had to fight for that Republican nomination. Yeah,
I can see people saying that about me, but it was more about my values and what I believed in. And I was actually excited about, and I mentioned Pat a while ago, Pat Campbell, and him bringing me on his conservative radio show because he believed in me. And then going to Republican groups during that time when I ran, I just felt at home. I feel at home now, and I'll have these same conservative Christian values until I die someday. Yeah.
Have you had or caught any flack from?
There's a small minority out there that want to say I'm a rhino, but basically,
no, I meant on the other side, on the Democrats, for you. Leaving
for the CRT issues and all that, because I had a good Democrat base, but there's people who knew me as a person, and then there's people who knew me as a Democrat. Yeah. And so the ones who knew me as a Democrat, I took a lot of flack from that. But, I had to show what I believed in, and the CRT issue out early, that separated me from the group. And I really took it hard. I took it on the chin for what I said. And
speaking of that, I'm actually glad you brought up CRT, because it is a very important issue today.
It's an education issue.
Yeah, it's very much so. And so you are opposed to CRT in school.
It has no place in our K-12 schools. And basically back in the 80s, it was evolved as a Juris Doctorate a theory, and it's not a curriculum, but it's a theory how to teach curriculum and to look at things. And for attorneys and those going in that profession, it was a way to look at law to see how it give an advantage to a certain race. And that's what, and then it evolved into being pushed into K-12. And I'm a firm believer that we need to get all the social issues and those things out and just really work on the math and the reading and
teaching kids.
Yeah, teaching kids and having history and teaching all about history, the good and bad of history, but not making people feel oppressed or have an oppressor, but that we lay it out there on the line.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Let me just throw this out. The Republican Party now seems to be taking the mantle that the ACLU gave up, the defender of individual liberties, right? Not going to get in the weeds with you, but generally, do you consider yourself more with the Republicans about, for instance, you mentioned about masks, vaccines, things like that. You feel very comfortable with protecting individual liberties. Second Amendment rights, for instance.
Yeah, I live out in the country.
Yeah.
We believe in
it's kiss of death to be against the NRA.
But we have.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
we have guns and we protect ourselves.
And we know how to use them.
Okay.
I have a gun and I know how to use it. Yeah.
So
Okay.
individual liberties are extremely important because I don't want the government. The government has to set base rules for us, but I don't want them to have overreach where they're controlling everything I do in my life.
But you grew up in Stillwell. I've got friends in Stillwell. It's a very, very devout religious community.
Absolutely.
Larry Adair, former speaker.
Yes.
I knew him from church.
Yes.
And so what I'm trying to say here is, what about the religious values? The defending the right to life, things like that.
Well, so I'm a Christian. And I just believe that, I don't believe I push that on anybody. I just believe that I role modeled that.
Yeah.
And so if people see that that's a good thing to be, maybe they might ask me or they might try to go in that direction, but never push it on anybody. I believe in the right to life, the protection of the unborn. And, it's because like my grandson, who's 1.5 years, when I watched him on the little sonograms coming up, so exciting.
Yes.
But I just can't imagine that just being wiped out, from some other entity, because to me, that was my grandson at that time as soon as I saw him. And, so.
Now, you're running for the job of leading the biggest socialist program in Oklahoma history. It's public education. It's a socialist program, right?
Not a socialist, a social program.
Well, okay.
Thank you.
Nonetheless.
Yeah.
It is. And it would be whether a Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberals, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But how would you like to take in which ways could you take conservative values and use them for reform in that?
Well, I think just what I've talked about, if you just get back to the basics and start teaching kids just what they need to know to be successful someday, to me, that's being conservative and not throwing the social issues in there.
Personal responsibility?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But it's not teaching them that a certain way of doing something because I'm a teacher in that class and I have control, teaching them a certain way to do things.
Sure.
But it is personal responsibility.
Yeah. Okay.
It is. One advantage I think you would have as superintendent is the fact that you have a relationship with those other superintendents. You know the districts, you know the schools, you know what's
there's
the
respect.
history, right? Yeah, and you just know so much about not just education, but about, for lack of better, politics of Oklahoma politics of education.
Absolutely.
I mean, everything, you can't separate politics from life. Okay, everything is politics, whether we like it or not. The question is, how are you going to use it for good or for bad? And I think that relationship you would have still with those, because I'm convinced, because I've lived in the state now for 30 years here in February, and longer than probably 5 times as long as I've lived anywhere else in this world, that in Oklahoma, you're not alone. There are many superintendents and other people that may be classified as Democrat,
Yeah.
but hold those as, again, as the former congressman from the second district, Dan Bourne, as he said, he has those Oklahoma values. And therefore, I believe there are many out there with those same values, and we've got to get off the party thing. We've got to I speak to Democrats, you've got to get off this party thing. And I speak to Republicans, you've got to get off the party thing, just because, as we saw with Joy Hoffmeister, I and Pat and others tried to warn everybody years ago that this lady was not just a wolf, she was like a piranha in perch clothing or something, and after the fact, everybody said, "Oh, you're right," and it's so obvious to see who is backing her and others. There are others that are running in other offices now, but if we would just take the time and quit being motivated by party, manipulated, I guess is the word.
There you go.
And therefore, I believe you have, getting back to my original thought, you have an advantage because you have the relationship with these people. You know how they think.
Yes.
And yet at the same time, with those conservative Oklahoma and GOP values, maybe we can finally get somebody to blend those.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a difficult situation, because probably I would say the majority are Republican superintendents. And same way with teachers. I think what I've heard in the past is that the majority are Republicans. Small majority. But superintendents, for the most part, and teachers, we look at school as what we can do for a child. We don't look at the political aspect of that, but we look at what we can. And I think it's famous for people to say, well, we don't ask a child if they're Democrat or Republican, so we just try to teach them.
Right, exactly.
And this is really a race that, could be nonpartisan, that it's just the person that knows the best about the job and can get in there and do a great job teaching kids, providing opportunity to teach kids. I'm that person, so I see it. I told a group of superintendents last week in front of the other candidate that I just believe this is my time.
Do you have a relationship, or what kind of relationship do you have with the governor?
I haven't ever spoken to the governor.
Okay.
I haven't. So, I would love to do that. I would actually love for him to call me and let me be the state board member of the congressional 2nd district, even though I'm running. But I don't think that would happen. But because
are you allowed to do that?
Yeah,
You can always ask.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, is there some legal restriction?
No,
to
I'm
be?
a citizen, and
Right.
I'm not in any
right.
office.
You're available.
I'm available. Yeah.
So up until the election, you could be.
Yeah, and then just
right.
turn over and be the state superintendent at that point. And, but since his candidate is my opponent, and that's Secretary of Ed, and that's who he wants in there.
Right.
That's probably not going to happen. But
Let me say that. You just said something. His candidate. The governor's putting together a slate, right?
oh yeah, and I mean, most people know that he is the one that he wants in there. The concern I have about that, no matter if it's the governor or anybody, I don't want to have one person that has complete control over the State Department of Ed. If his person is in there, he will have 100% control over the State Department of Ed, because he has the board members, the state board members that he appoints.
Well, let me ask you this then, too. How much authority does the superintendent actually exercise over education in the state of Oklahoma?
I think it's massive.
Really?
I do. More than influence and bully pulpit, more than anything. The state superintendent sits on numerous boards, also teacher retirement board and so on, the state regents.
Well, you look at the fines that she assessed against Epic, and many people really think that was just punitive. That was vendetta,
Yeah, we see lots of those things. And we've got to get back to a calmness where we're working with people. And, Epic does a great job for that population of students and really 5% of the population, I believe, needs that virtual education, and they've been doing it for a decade. And so my good friend is the superintendent of Epic, and I've got to go in and see the guts of how they work.
Yeah,
with how they do the accountability system with those kids, and then what they offer that population of students. So I'm proud of what he's doing.
That's good.
It's
That's
an
good.
innovation,
Yeah, it is.
and right now we need innovation. We need
do.
multiple innovations.
We
Yeah.
do. And he actually reached out to me when the pandemic hit and said, is there anything that we can do to help rural schools? And, and if we do, just let them know. So,
You say he. Do you want to identify?
yeah, Superintendent Bart Banfield.
Okay.
I consider him a friend. And,
Yeah.
and he's trying to do his job to help kids, and I'm trying to do my job to help kids. And there's still a lot of angst out there about Epic and what they're doing. But at the end of the day, what can we do to help a child, and can we make ourselves better?
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's about the children.
Yeah.
It is.
Epic is the Donald Trump of education. No, seriously, what's funny, all the lawsuits that have been brought against Epic.
Investigations.
Well, yeah.
10 years full of investigations.
Yeah, and yet they're still going on. I mean, they haven't been able, every time, I'm on this local TV and then in the local newspaper Facebook page, and all these people, oh yeah, we got Epic there. Well, they've got this and this and this and it. And I just said, well, let's just wait a minute and see. And sure enough, every time it ends up being groundless. And we know, I mean, if you really look at it, just as it was with Donald Trump, you know who's behind this, and it's just a hit job, basically. Someone's trying to put a hit. So it's really refreshing, because that, to me, wasn't even really in my mind to bring up. But
it's forced us to become better.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
And there's not
just
enough of
step
that.
our game up. And
Yeah.
There's not enough of that competitiveness.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
I know a lot of people involved. I've had teachers that have been able to move over there because
Yeah.
they can make more money.
You bet.
And
Merit
I
pay.
would have loved to keep them, but
Yes.
Yeah.
my special ed teacher came to me one day and said, "I have an opportunity to make $60,000 over there." And of course, she was pretty new, making 35 to 40. And
Yeah.
I just told her, I want you here, but you look at a 10-year period, I'm making 20,000 more. That's a house.
Yeah.
And so she did not want to leave, but I encouraged her that she needed to look at that decision, because if it was for her, I mean, I needed her for my children out there, but
at the same time, if she can't perform, she didn't get that merit pay. She's just getting the base pay.
And she could perform.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the dead weight doesn't stay on at Epic.
Yeah.
And that's important to point out.
Yeah, and that's what's so tough right now in this atmosphere with having that many emergency certified teachers, and really, and I say bless them for coming back and helping us.
Yeah.
And we just have to provide them services to help them excel.
My final point on this, 1889 Institute has done a lot of research on education. One of the things they did, and it's probably been about 4 years ago, they did some fantastic deep dive digging into all the regulations that Oklahoma public schools face. I could not believe the pages and pages of spreadsheet of regulations, everything from the busing to the size of the desk to the lunchroom to everything. And charter schools were basically put up as, well, we just won't apply all those regulations on the charter schools. And the charter schools end up giving a better education product.
It allows them.
Yeah. My point is, if we don't need it for the charter schools, why are we bogging down our regular brick and mortar public schools with all those things?
I would like to just thank you for that comment.
Yes.
Because that is the question we've been
John,
asking.
That's why it costs so much to run a public school. That's why Epic can run circles around them. Because, well, of course, they don't even have the brick and mortar, right?
And you had the frustration level.
Yeah.
That goes with our teachers at our brick and mortar, because we need to take those strings attached so they can actually teach.
Yeah. So my point is, if it's okay to increase charter schools, which none of these regulations apply to, well, then take the gloves off us old-fashioned brick and mortar public schools and let us run by the rule set that we put on them.
Yeah. And see, we've discussed that for years, and the opponents of that will come back and say, well, what about accountability? Mm-hmm. But we try to say, well, but you're allowing them to do it. So give us flexibility in what we do, and let us be the professionals that we are.
Yeah.
That is true. And it gets back to what you were saying earlier, that you believe in competition. Yeah. In other words, you're not afraid of the charter school. the way you look at it is, let's bring us up to the level of charter school, and then let the parents choose. And if, for example, if I've got a public school over here, I'll give you an example. My own children, they were in a private school here in town. I didn't feel they were getting what they needed, so I sent them to a public school simply because they had more options, and I knew that if they wanted to go on to a better university, it might be easier being at the top level at this public school than at this private school. Yeah. And that public school turned out to be a really good school. They got a good education, and every one of them went to a really fine school. Well, 3 of them did. One decided he wanted to be a chef. But
that's
nothing
okay.
against chefs.
That's
yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah, it's okay. Nothing. I mean, well, he's making more money than all of the others now. But
I like to eat.
Yeah. So, but I'm just saying that just because a certain entity is performing better at this point doesn't mean that they're going to be performing that way. It's just human nature that competition makes us better. Usain Bolt, nobody will ever be able to run as fast as Usain. Well, Usain Bolt hadn't won a race probably in the last 2 years, and he finally retired because it happened. And you're always going to get someone that's going to figure it out and be able to emulate and then hopefully innovate and do better. And honestly, that's so needed right now in our public education. We've got to, the thing you nailed, we got to get away from social programs, trying to make our schools social proving grounds.
Yeah, and they shouldn't be. But I think it's important to say with charter schools, that's really an old issue now because they are public schools. And so we fought that 10 years ago saying, we don't want to take the money out of public schools. But the more I learned about inner city and our metropolitan schools is that parents needed a choice.
Right.
Out in the country, out in the rural areas, we do a great job serving our community and our families, so parents aren't looking for that other option out there.
Right. But at the same time, hopefully, the hope is that the public schools in Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and those lot maybe, that they get the message and start competing.
I think we should always up our game.
Right.
We should always look to become better.
Right.
Right.
But it is refreshing that you're not threatened by charter schools. I mean, that's I think the message we have here, that you're not threatened.
No, I'm not at all.
Right.
I think it's a choice. I think parents need that choice. Mm-hmm. And I'll step up my game to try to keep kids.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well,
the only thing I can say, John, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really good. I hope the people out here, I hope the people out there can get a lot, just glean everything you can from this, and don't buy the commercials, don't buy the whatever, just look into it for yourself. And I want to thank you all for joining us this Saturday afternoon here and whenever you're listening to this. And I'm going to close with, let's go, Brandon.